Over the past few years, I have bought way too many books. And guess what? I have still so many left to read. Let me be honest, I have read a lot of these. Let's see. No, yes, no, yes, no, half, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and no. The shelf is full, but there are a bunch more books that I have read. It's just that, a lot of these I still have to read. However, I did end up reading a bunch of books this year, more than last year, so let's go talk about that. Now here they are. There are the 9 books I can count. I've also read a couple of stories in this book, but it isn't finished, so there's that. Let's talk about them. It's more books than last year. I consider this a win. Let me just do this real quick. Oh, I can do that. That's gonna mess things up. So reading-wise, 2024 was actually a pretty good year. I had a blast. I read some incredible books, some of which are close to being my favorites of all time, I think. So let's go through them. I gotta start with saying that I lost where it is. Here, I read a few stories of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which I bought... which I bought like a couple months ago, and it's a blast. It is so difficult to read because this is from like the 1800s, I think. 1892 is when this was first published. I don't know from when the actual stories are, but they're old. So some of the language is incredibly difficult, but it's a lot of fun. It's very fun to read the stories that started everything Sherlock Holmes related. If you know me, you know that I really like the show Elementary, which is a Sherlock Holmes show. Yeah, I really like that. I should probably also tell you that maybe you noticed The Haunting of Hill House being part of that collection of books that I read last year. Because last year, in the video that I did about all these books, I talked about this book and how I was like, yeah, I'm gonna finish reading this before the year ends. I didn't. I finished this in like the first or second week of January. I am sorry for disappointing you, but that also means that I probably don't have to add much to it. I can just tell you that this is a fantastic book. Also a bit older, but it is a lot of fun, and it is nothing like the show, which I think I like, because the show is one of my favorite shows of all time, and this being so different just makes it that it basically feels like an anthology to some degree, where there are multiple stories about the same thing. And it's really cool. It's very cool. I can highly recommend this. It is not scary, I don't think so, but it is interesting. It is confusing, very intriguing, and I love this book. Highly recommend it. I'm not gonna give any ratings because I don't remember any of it. I don't. Alright, let's see. What else? What did I start off my year with? Oh, there's The Naturals. I started The Naturals. The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes is basically Criminal Minds, but they're teenagers and they have sort of powers. They're not trained to do something, to be good at something, to profile people. They just have that. They just know that. The main character, Cassie, is a natural profiler. She does everything a profiler learns, but she knows that. That's just how her mind works. There's someone else who is insane with numbers and statistics, and she just knows that. There's someone who can detect lies. There's someone who can read emotions. It is really fun. And this first book is so good. It is so much fun, and yeah, I love Criminal Minds. I am obsessed with Criminal Minds. When I was told that there are multiple books that are basically Criminal Minds, I was like, I need this. I need this right now. So you've maybe seen me in some videos read the second book, Killer Instinct, but I should tell you, I really like the first one. That said, I also read the second one, and the third. I have yet to read the last one, but the second one, also good. Not nearly as good though. Mostly because the main character, Cassie, was super annoying in this one. And I don't know if that was on purpose, but I really didn't like it. The story was pretty good. The thing is that Cassie, whenever the writer, Jennifer Lynn Barnes, whenever she makes it, like whenever she has Cassie profile, she writes it in a certain way that is pretty cool in the first book. In the second book, it's like Please stop. Just come up with new words. Every single time she'll say something like, Cassie jumped into the mind of the killer. Cassie put her in the killer's shoes. And the way she writes it every single time makes one, Cassie super unlikable because she's annoying, and two, it is just very annoying. That annoyed me in the second book, clearly. The story is still pretty good. It's just that the main character really, really annoyed me because it was super repetitive. With that said again, the third book was very cool again. I really liked the third book. Cassie was less annoying, even though she still did the thing, she didn't do it as often. There's some logic stuff to the story that I didn't like as much in the third book, where it's like everyone's got things going on in their personal lives as well. And Cassie has a major thing and she's not allowed to deal with it, and it kind of makes sense, but at the same time I was like, this is such a big deal, it's really stupid that she can't really deal with it. So yeah, this one, like the first, is clearly the best so far. I do not necessarily like where the whole story is going and what I will be reading in the next one. That's just personal preference. It is also like the most logical way for the story to go. So I think that these books are fantastic, and I really like this one as well. I'm very excited to read the next one. The reason I am not reading that currently is because I am reading Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse. Percy Jackson is a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm currently in the third book. This year I read the first and the second book. The movie now sucks. Very young me loved it, but the movie now, looking back at it sucks. The show is fun, didn't finish it yet, but it's very fun. The book, however, is great. The first book is fantastic, it is so much fun. Percy is very, very likable. The second book is also great. Still very likable, very cool. However, someone punished me right away. I am rambling, I know this, but I am realizing something. Now that I'm reading the third book, I am realizing something. The first book is very much an introduction to the world and of what's to come, and it's a very standalone story. It is really, really cool. The second book, we are aware that something big is gonna happen, and I realize that even though it has a standalone story, the second book and the third book too, and probably fourth book as well, I don't know yet, they are setting up the story. They are setting up what's to come. They are great on their own. They are very clearly preparing you for what's to come. And I love it. I think this world is so cool, but it's also very clearly setting things up for you. And that's my only point of critique, I suppose, for the Percy Jackson stories. I think it is very important for Percy to go through these things and to make, to have that character development, but still, that's something that I've been thinking of. So that's a few more books done. Great. We've got a couple more to go. Let's stick with the Greek mythology. I read Medusa. This is the story of, you guessed it, probably, I hope so. This is the story of Medusa from Medusa's perspective. It is a very romanticized story. If you don't know Medusa, and I assume you do, Medusa is this beautiful woman who is punished by Athena, and turned into a monster. A woman whose hair consists of snakes. And whoever looks at her straight in the eyes gets turned into stone. It is sad. It is very sad. And I always thought of her, especially because of the story from Percy Jackson, I always thought of her as this awful monster, someone worthy of cutting her head off, This story made me feel like there's so much more to it. Obviously, like I said, it's very romanticized, but it's very interesting. She is on this island. She's away from everything and everyone, afraid of Poseidon for reasons that I don't have to go into. If you know the backstory of Medusa, you'll know. On that island, she just does her own thing, and one day Perseus arrives on the island. She can see him, but obviously she doesn't want him to see her. And they talk a bunch, and they fall in love without ever seeing each other, or without him ever seeing her. Slowly you learn more. You learn more about him, you learn more about her, and there's this very beautiful story of her struggle and what everything means in her world. It's difficult that I didn't really like this much. It felt very dragged out, but I also think that it is very beautiful. Very early on, I was unsure of what I thought of this story, and that was because it was very dragged out, and there were moments where it's just like, why? Why do you do this? Why do you talk like this? I don't know, I wasn't very into it, and the further I got, the more I realized that I found it beautiful, and I found it very interesting, and I wanted to know more. I knew the story of Medusa, so obviously I was like, I know how this could end. But I also was like, I still want to know. I still really want to see how this ends. And I'm surprised to say that it doesn't really end the way that I thought it would. So there's that. Medusa, it was alright. It was pretty good. Yeah, alright. So I here have the two books. One of them I liked the best this year, and it has become one of my favorite books of all time. And one of them I liked the least this year, and has become one of my least favorite books of all time. After Fight Club. I really disliked Fight Club. The worst is The Midnight Library. I have talked about this before in a video where I was reading it and where I was complaining about it a bit, so I shouldn't have to go into that at all really, but I just like to say that I didn't really like this book. It was very disappointing. The concept of a library with all your alternate realities, if you had made different decisions in life, super cool. Really cool. It wasn't handled that well. It was very disappointing. And the actual, lives that the main character led were just not that interesting, because very early on you realize how this story is gonna go. You realize where the story is gonna go, what the main character is like, what her life will look like, all that stuff. So a lot of it feels like filler. This story could be 80 pages long, 100 pages long, and still have the same effect, maybe even be better, maybe even make you feel like you have the right amount of character development. Because at some point there isn't really character development anymore. There's just the main character experiencing things. She's just experiencing things that do not add much to the story, in my opinion. Some parts, sure, they felt like they needed to be there, even if they were just experiences and not part of her development. I still think that this book could have been way shorter, and because of that, way better. Finally, let me tell you about my favorite book of the year. And I know it wasn't released this year, but a movie came out for Turtles All the Way Down based on this book of the same name by John Green. That movie was one of my favorite movies that I've seen this year. And whenever this came out, I think May it was, probably May, I was blown away. I was crying, I was laughing, it was so good. And the moment I finished the book, I immediately ordered the book. The thing is, I was so excited to read the book that I also bought it on my phone, so I could already start it before it would arrive. So that is how excited I was about Turtles All the Way Down. The anxiety you feel from someone dealing with OCD is honestly brilliant in this book. In the movie too, but we're talking about the book. There are moments in this book where Asa is struggling with something, where she's stuck in her mind. You're feeling it. You can almost feel what she's feeling because it's so well written. It's beautiful too, beautiful language. I don't know what to tell you. It's a book that I really need you to read. Very simply put, it is a story about a young girl, Asa, who has OCD and is constantly paranoid about bacteria and how anything could kill her, how she's constantly sick when she's not. She's got this cut in her finger that she's constantly just picking with her fingernails because she's constantly checking if it's infected, if she's gonna die. She is terrified of all of it. But at the same time, she is a young girl who is interested in young girl things. She is slowly forming this interest in boys, and one of them is Davis, whose father has disappeared. So he's got things going on, and she's trying to figure out what's going on there and help him, but also she is experiencing what it's like to be a 16-year-old girl. I love this book, and I love the movie, and I'm gonna be rewatching it and rereading this soon. I know I will, because this is just a phenomenal book, and it made me want to write more realistic stories. I like writing about characters who are stuck in their head. I like writing about characters who have a bunch of terrifying thoughts, like I do in the 3 books that I've written now. But reading this made me think there is more. There is so much more, and I could do so much more, and I'm excited for that. This book is an incredible inspiration, and I love it. Those were the books that I read this year. I think there's 8 or 9 of them, which is more than last year. I hope you all had a fantastic year. I am very excited for what's to come next year. I know that the videos this year have been a little more scarce, but I will be planning a lot for next year, including my next book. My 3rd book, as in the release for the 3rd book. I'll be talking about that. Thank you all so much for watching these videos, and I am very excited to see you all next year. Bye! I usually do this. Bye!